You are now tuned into the sounds of
Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
Tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Nathan Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. This is episode number 386 of the podcast. And in this episode, week 2, Maryland football, we are recapping the loss, painfully, to Michigan State. And we're also previewing this upcoming Saturday's game against Virginia. Before we get into that, there's a few things I want to say up front. You should have seen episodes number 384 and 385 of Baltimore Ravens recap and the Washington Commanders recap. Stay tuned for some WNBA content. It's kind of starting to repeat, going towards the last week of the season before playoffs, so be tuned in for that. We're going to do continue our series, One Mind, One Goal series. So stay tuned for that. And as always, also too, the recaps for the Baltimore Ravens and Commanders will be posted. This episode is recorded. You can catch it as well on Team NBS Media, as I'm also a part of their crew now. I've been with them for a few months now. So this is also on their network. Appreciate the opportunity, everybody. Let's painfully get into it. We lost. Maryland. We lost 27-24. I gotta find my clip.
Mm-hmm. I can't defend that. Mm-mm. What do you want me to say to that?
Okay. Where do I begin? So it's the first time since 2020. We're now 1-1 on the year. My biggest takeaways: self-inflicting. A lot of the loss was very self-inflicting. I can't defend. I'll get into the. I'll stick with this for a second. When you're facing a 3rd and 1 on your own 44, it's Michigan's 3rd and 1 on their 44. 3 minutes left in the first half. About 3:20, 3:21, if I remember correctly. And Nolan Ray is in the shotgun as a Wildcat quarterback. No, I'm saying that all wrong. Dylan Wade was he glided as a fullback, lost his balance. We went 3 and out. I really thought the play where Jonathan Kim, he missed what left 55 yards. Jack Howe missed a 41-yarder. But that play, that Wildcat play for us, Nolan Ray was in the backfield, and I didn't. First of all, I didn't like that play. because you got a solid core of running backs. You got Hemby and them. Trust your guys. I don't know why you went for a wildcat on 3rd and 1. That was weird to me. We were extremely poorly disciplined against the run. Their running game, there was had 5 carries for at least 10 yards. And there were a lot of times where their running backs found gaps, even made gaps of their own. And that was something that was one of my questions coming into the season, is stopping the run other than creating a pass rush. On that final drive for Michigan State, we forced an early 4th down. But Mr. Jalen Husky decided was called for pass interference, and we ended up losing the game, which also takes me into the corners. Listen, it's the second game of the season. I'm not going to press the red button, but I would like to caution. I cannot defend. First and foremost, Adrian Chills had finished the game with 363 yards and 3 touchdowns. Numbers probably would have been more had it not been for the wild throws he made in the game. Mr. Perry Fisher was questionable, if I remember correctly. He was limited. But I mean, they had others. And I understand that this secondary is young. I look at it as the baptism of fire. This is where you look for guys to grow and learn from their mistakes. I'm going to particularly pick on Mr. Kevin Humes. I'm not picking on him, but just as an example, there was times where he got beat, especially on the 77-yard touchdown reception. And he actually, Nick Marsh finished, I think, was 194 yards on 8 catches.
Mm-hmm. I can't defend that. What do you want me to say to that?
In fairness, positive. We did have 3 interceptions. So 2 of those were bad throws. That third one where it slipped out of Adrian's hand and it was right in Glenn Miller's lap. So, look, I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to be harsh. But I just wanted to see, when you have 2 freshmen, and then Braden Lee, and then Lionel Whitaker as well, there's, again, they didn't really, it was disappointing. If I had to be honest, in terms of a grade, they would get a C, not a C minus C, but a C. And again, this is the second game of the season. I'm not going to panic. And some of that also, too, I thought was the way how we schemed against them. I would have preferred. I was looking to see some adjustments. I didn't see that. Staying on the positives, I liked that with Billy Edwards Jr. and Ty Felton. That's actually starting to become a nice one-on-one recipe for. I think that's going to be key for Maryland's offense. Because they've this connection now the last 2 weeks has been spectacular. Ty Felton looked really good. 11 catches for 152 yards. After the week before 178 yards. So hey, senior year is looking good as a draft stock. I think he's going to be a highly touted wide receiver. I think again, this is just building up his draft stock. Billy Edwards Jr., I was always confident in him being our starter. He led our offense. He looked good. I mean, he had 253 yards in passing. He completed his passes of 76%. He had a rushing touchdown that came late in the first quarter. The only thing was that interception late in the fourth quarter. But Billy Edwards led that offense, and he did everything he could. When it came down to it, we just we just fell flat in our face, and that's just what it is. You can't take anything for granted. I mean, my biggest thing was when we're coming into this game, their biggest thing was their rushing attack. That was the key to me. When you've got Lynch, I think his name was, oh my gosh, Lynch Adams, Kieran Lynch Adams. This is a 6th year as a running back. He actually started at Rutgers. Then he went transferred to UMass, I want to say it was. I think him and then Adrian Childs, excuse me. Those two are you have to scheme for both of them. And on top of that, too, they had their offensive line from what it was last year is a lot better. When you've got 2 power forward transfers, who was it? Tanner Miller and I want to say Luke Newman from Oregon State and Holy Cross. And those and they're pretty good. The only thing also to look on the other side is they're not the best passing the ball. Jordan had I keep saying Jordan. My apologies. Aiden had 3 touchdowns, but I'm not really giving them this win because he threw 3 interceptions, and that's also too like if you look at the week before where they played Florida Atlantic, if I remember correctly, I'm like, okay, I didn't see anything different. I mean, in that game, I believe their tight end was their leading receiver. So I was a bit just not perturbed, but there were some things I will say that in this game, that's why I didn't truly look at the UConn game and going, yep, we're official. No. Just UConn is just not a good football team. No disrespect, they're not as highly touted as a team like Michigan State, team like Virginia, and so forth. But if I had Billy Edwards, I would give him a game ball. Outside of the running game was essentially we committed to the run early, but then we completely abandoned it because we couldn't help Hemby. We couldn't help Nolan. We couldn't help Kobe create any holes in the defense. I mean, they ran the ball 23 times for 70 yards and no touchdowns. Nolan Ray had the longest rushing yard of the day, which was just 10 yards.
Mm-hmm. I can't defend that. Mm-mm. What do you want me to say to that?
I mean, this is some bad stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I just don't know. This is ridiculous. Oh, Lord.
I mean, Ty Felton, I give him a game ball. I thought he played really well. Again, 2 weeks into the season, he's looking really stellar. Just his ability to get open, made plays when needed to. Mr. Prather. Outside of that, I was disappointed. Nobody else really stepped up in that offense. I mean, Prather was the second one behind. He finished with 5 catches of 38 yards. Octavian Smith Jr. and Shalek Knotts, they had a catch, but that was nothing. I mean, I'd give them a fair grade if I had to grade them. Maybe a B plus. Like the biggest, I think for me with the running game, in fact, I have to give them an incomplete because I like this offensive line for Maryland is new. And again, they have to learn how to create space. And like, even with the UConn game, there were times where Ramon and the crew had to create their own yards. Like, I get it. It's also running backs have to, do their part too. But without a true like running game, like we can't just depend on our passing game. We really going to have to really be effective at hampering down our run game. Offensive line, I outside of I think really just struggling with run production, and also too like they did okay. I still say it's room for improvement. The defense, we looked good except the defensive backs. Again, it's a young group. I'm not going to get on them like I did earlier. It was just the baptism of fire. They'll be fine. I'm not worried about them. But overall, I mean, the biggest thing is, Jack Hiles, made a 45-yard in the third quarter, and he would have made that 41-yarder if he would have made that 41-yarder. I think that would have we would have won the game. But I kind of want to kind of go back to that 3rd and 1. I didn't like that call because it's 3rd and 1. I would have put some trust in my offensive line and say, okay, we just need a yard. Even if your quarterback sneaked it, I've been okay with that. But I just don't like that. I just didn't like that play call. I think we should have went with something different. I think we could have been more aggressive instead of punting it. But hey, we just got to chalk it up and see how it goes. And defensively, Brian Williams is going to sit with his guys and go back and look at the tape and be ready for Michigan State. Be ready for Virginia. For the most part, we just got outmatched. We just outperformed. And on that final drive, I don't know what that was, but that was I hate that type of defense that prevent defense because it prevents nothing. And that's what we did. It was very lackluster. So, yeah, but it's okay. Maryland will be fine. We'll bounce back from it. Again, this is a young season. We got plenty of football. I'm not worried. I don't think we should. And I really, again, for me, I've learned not to. I've learned not to try to be over dramatic when we lose a game. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. Like, we'll be fine. It's early in the season. Plenty of football. We got to stop that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break. When we come back from the break, we're going to preview Maryland versus Virginia. We'll be right back. And we're back. Saturday, Maryland plays Virginia. We're on the road. It's a road game for us. The Virginia Cavaliers are 2-0 so far to start the young season. Last year, this is not our first time. We saw them last time in the Pinstripe Bowl, if I remember correctly. And last year we won, I believe it was 42-14. Former ACC opponent. I'm glad we don't play in the ACC. I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. But in all seriousness, last year they finished 3-9. No, it wasn't Virginia we faced in the Pinstripe Bowl. My apologies. I can't remember. But not last year was Auburn. The year before, I can't remember. It might have been the year before. It might have been, but that's besides the point. Last year they finished 3-9. They were 2-6 in the ACC. Tony Elliott is their head coach. This is his third year. I know he was an assistant at Clemson, if I remember correctly. Last year, they defeated Richmond 34-13, and they also beat Wake Forest. They were down 13 points, if I remember correctly, in the fourth quarter. So they got a pretty decent squad. I like Anthony Colandrea. He's a sophomore against James Madison. He finished 26 of 26, my apologies, for 377, 2 touchdowns. So far in the season, looked at his stats. He's about 75% of his passes been completed. He's on 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions so far. The biggest thing is their offense. That is a strength. They are 6th in the ACC with 327, 5 touchdowns, obviously. And they're actually tied for 4th in completion percentage. They actually do lead, as of now, the conference with 3 interceptions. But they're on the flip side of that, their passing defense is extremely, extremely suspect. They're just a middle of the tier where I think they're like the bottom 3 in passing allowed. They allow over 250 yards in passing. They allow opponents to complete over 60% of their passes and have yet to record an interception. They actually have prevented a touchdown. That's it. But other than that, there's really not much other than, for me, my keys are, we beat them last year. They were up 14-0, and then we came back and had 3 unanswered touchdowns from in that game correctly. So I'm really kind of curious to see how we look on the road. I think this is our first road test. How do our defensive backs step up after this past week against Michigan State? I'm curious to see how we slow their offense down. I would expect our defense to be very zone happy-ish. I think for Virginia to beat us, I think they're going to beat us passing the ball. So I expect Brian Williams to make some adjustments defensively. Because last week against Florida Atlantic, they had 114 yards. Anthony threw for 114 yards and no touchdowns. So I'm curious to see how our secondary will look against that. Outside of that, I think Billy Edwards is going to be doing Billy Edwards things. I'm not overly concerned. MJ Morris did not play last week because he had an injury. So we'll see how if he's ready to go in this upcoming week. But outside of that, I think Maryland will defeat Virginia. The final score, I'm going to go with 31-17.
Guaranteed.
I think they have all the tools. I think last week against Michigan State, I think it's going to motivate the Terrapins to win this game. And again, it's a road test, so let's see how we look on the road. Other than that, we will be ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into one final thought.
Thoughts are running through my mind. So I took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
One final thought is it's nice to see how everything is coming along so far for the season. I'm really, really happy to see where we're going with this team. I want to clarify, it was Virginia Tech that we beat in the Pinstripe Bowl, not Virginia. So facing Virginia, former ACC opponent, I'm actually curious to see how that'll look. So it should be a great game. Best of luck to both teams. I can't wait. Game comes on Saturday, 8:30. Check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Nathan Snell, Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. We're out of here. Peace. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great weekend, excuse me. And we're out of here. Peace. Stay up.
to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
And I wanna thank you. All I wanna do is say thank you for everything.